Hi, it's Dale from QuiltingCowboy.com. I am very excited to review with you a pattern from Annie's that I really love. It's called Batik Bonanza. And what I love about it is it really uses your stash. And so if you have a bunch of batiks that you've been meaning to use, this is a great way to use those. So Batik Bonanza is the pattern of the day. I should probably throw in a little, it's Batik Bonanza. This is what we're going to be doing today. I happen to have these amazing fabrics that I really love, that I have just been looking for something to use them on. And so this pattern is perfect for that because it's a scrappy quilt, right? So just whatever you have in terms of your leftover batiks, this is a great pattern for that. It's from Annie's and it was designed by Lucy Fasley and Michael Burns. And so I'm gonna walk you through that and kind of show you how to do it, okay? All right, so the first step to this pattern is to kind of sort your fabrics. And it asks you to separate your light to mediums from your darker swatches. Okay, so I have the light to mediums kind of in this one set of pile, right? And they are kind of these light to medium pinks and yellows, right? I'm kind of going into the medium range a little bit, but the darks are gonna be these. I've done them all in the same color palette just because I like a more cohesive look. A batik has naturally just a lot going on, right? So I try and tone it down just a little bit by staying within the same color family, but certainly if you wanna, go with a bunch of colors, do that as well. That's just a personal preference for me. So that's what I'm doing. My darks are gonna be these, right? And my light to mediums are gonna be these. And I have separated them because the first step is to take from your light to medium pile and cut 60 8-inch squares, okay? And then you're gonna do 90 4 3/8 inch squares. So the first thing I'm gonna do, as always, is to actually iron my scraps. Why? Because that pre-shrinks them a little bit, right? With the heat and the moisture from the iron, it actually pre-shrinks it. So you're gonna wanna do that first. Also, if you wanna add a little sizing, it helps, the fabric kind of be a little bit easier to work with. All right, so that's the first step. All right, so I'm all set. I have my spray that I like to use. It's called Monica's Mist. It's sold at Monica's Quilt Shop where I teach in Palm Desert. And so I'm just gonna take my light fabrics and start with them, lay them out, hit them real quick with both the mist and the iron in order to give me a fabric that, like I said, is not only pre-shrunken, but also a little easier to work with. All right, I'm actually on my last piece here that I'm gonna iron before I start cutting. And I just wanted to share with you while I do this. I know that we all sometimes get in a bit of a slump as far as, your motivation to sew. And other times, you just can't find enough time in the day. And then there are times where it's just like, ugh, this seems like a lot of work. The way that I get around that is doing exactly this, right? Doing a scrappy quilt. We forget to sometimes go shopping in our own stash, and I know that we probably have more fabric in there than we have life expectancy. So why not, start there? I know that once I start going through my stash, I start seeing all the potential projects that I have purchased over the years. And so a scrappy quilt is a great way to not only use up what you have, but also to reignite that imagination and to get you thinking about new projects. So I strongly recommend, if you find yourself in a slump, start there. Go back to your stash, review what you already have, because you bought it for a reason, because you really love it, right? And so when you find those pieces that really speak to you, that's when you want to find the right pattern. And a scrappy quilt is a great way to start. Okay, so I have ironed both my light to mediums and also my darks. So now it's time to start cutting. All right, step number 1 calls for you to dive into your light to medium colors which is to say that I've put aside my dark colors, right? We're just gonna be working on the light to medium. We're gonna do 8-inch strips, all right? So I'm taking my fabric, I'm cutting an 8-inch strip because we're gonna be creating 60 8-inch squares, all right? So I'm just gonna go through that with all of my fabrics and make sure that I have enough. Okay, quickly just to review something very basic, but it's something when I'm teaching I see a lot that newer sewers make a mistake on. And that is assuming that a straight line is a straight line, when in fact it often is not. For an example, let me just put this down here. You can see that this fabric actually looks like it is a straight line. But when I go through with my ruler and actually match it up, I can see that in fact, wow, it is quite off. And so to the naked eye, it would have appeared like this would have been a straight line, but I'm glad that I checked. And so I'm gonna go through here and actually just cut off this excess to ensure that I have a nice straight edge. Perfect, right? So now that I'm ready to cut that 8-inch piece off, I know that for a fact that it's gonna be square now, okay? All right, so I have gone through and cut just a traditional width of fabric, 8 inches, and I've done that with each one of my lights to mediums. And what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna line them up and cut them in bulk, right? No sense in doing it one at a time. So go ahead and line them up, make sure that they're perfect. I know that they're perfectly square because I double checked it on the front end, but I'm just gonna do 3 or 4 on top of each other here, right? Like that, line that up, get my ruler. Now, again, your cutting has to be perfect. Make sure that you are exactly gonna cut off the ends, right? Because you don't want that part. And then it's an 8-inch square, and so I measure and cut 8 inches. Now I have nice 1, 2, 3, 8-inch squares, and I'll just keep doing that all the way through until I get to my 60. All right, the next step is to do the same fabrics, which is your light to mediums, in a smaller cut, right? So I did the larger 8-inch squares, those are done. I'm gonna set those aside. Now it's time to cut the 4 3/8. Okay, that's a bit of an unusual measurement. So what you wanna do is go to 4 1/4, and then it's just the next tick past there, all right? And then just line it up and cut yourself some strips of 4 3/8. And I'm gonna repeat the same process of kind of mass producing them, all right? I'll set those aside. So finishing up cutting our light to medium fabric, we had cut these smaller squares, right? Which we're then gonna cut on the diagonal to create these little triangles, right? So just take a few of those, no problem. Put them down, make sure they're nice and lined up, and then cut them diagonally right through the center. Make sure they're all lined up. Shablam. We have triangles, right? So you're gonna do that with all of your smaller light to medium fabric squares. I'll do all of those later. Moving on to the dark fabrics, okay? It calls for 8 inches, right, by 15 1/2. I've already cut this, right, in an 8-inch strip. So now I'm gonna cut 15 1/2, 15 1/2 like this. Make sure that's good and lined up. And there we go. That is our rectangles that we're cutting first. And we're gonna cut 30 of these that are 8 inches by 15 1/2. So it's a fairly substantial size, right? And we're just gonna keep doing those until we're done. and then we're going to go back and cut 30 that are 8 3/8 square out of the dark. All right, so let's get that done. I am chugging along, and I have the dark fabrics cut in the 8" by 15 and a half. I have the smaller squares that are cut. They are 4 3/8 inch, and then I'm going to cut them in half like we did with the lighter fabrics in order to get these. Now, the next square is kind of interesting in that from the dark fabric, it is 8 3/8. Now my ruler is only 8 and a half, right? So how do we solve that? The easiest way is to take another ruler, right? And I know that I just need another 1/4 inch, right? So actually another 1/8 inch. So you just line that one up here to buy me that extra 1/8 inch. I can line it up, knock that one next to it, and I know that I have 8, this one is 8 and a half, and then that extra 1/8 right there that I got it perfectly lined up, and then it's all lined up along the bottom here. I know I'm good to cut. I have completed cutting out my pieces that I'm going to need in order to build the block, right? And God bless me, but I'm sorry, the type on here I find quite small. So I've gone ahead and kind of just identified with a sticky, like this is a C triangle, right? And so I know that this stack, when it references a C triangle, I got that. So I got it all laid out. I got the pieces ready to go. The next step is going to be to take your B, what they're calling a B square, and actually mark it on the diagonal on the wrong side of the fabric, right there. And so that you know where that is. This pen's a little dry. All right, let's see. Maybe I'll do it in this. Here we go. So mark that, just kind of find the center point, mark that, and you're going to want to do that on all of your B, what's called a B squares. All right, do that next. To begin assembling this, we're going to want to take our A block, which is a really large rectangle that we cut, right, out of our dark fabric. We're going to want to place that here in the middle of our workspace. We then have our B squares that we drew the line in, and I should note that I did it in a wash away type of ink rather than a permanent ink. You may want to do the same or use some type of chalk. Anyhow, just take this, and the diagonal line is to run from the corner up through to almost the center of this rectangle, right? You then stitch along the line that you have drawn, and then we're going to trim the excess off. So I'm going to do that now. It's all in place, and I'm just going to sew along that line that I drew. All right, here we are. Got the whole piece. You can see the line that I drew through it with the wash away ink, and then just sew right along that line to get started. I'm hoping you can see what I did here, but you can see that this is sewn right along this line that I drew. I'm then going to take my ruler and put it on 1/4 inch, just like that, and cut that part off. We're then going to iron this part open. Got it? So what we end up with is the A rectangle essentially being replaced on the corner by one of our B squares. We're going to then repeat that entire process with another B, that's been marked, right? Just like we did before. Putting it here on this side now, whereas we were on this side before, right? So now we're here, and we're gonna do the exact same process, just sew along that line that you've already drawn. Okay, that is now sewn. Again, repeating the same process. I'm going to trim this up to 1/4 of an inch, and then I'm going to press this open so I end up with this experience. Hooray! Moving on with our block, we had just finished doing essentially what was creating these really large, like flying geese, right? It was our A rectangle and then adding the B's on the corner, and then that is the first step of the block, right? So we're gonna put this aside, that's assembled. We're gonna move on to, which is essentially combining the C triangles with the D triangles to get these, right? And then we're gonna just put them together into this series that requires 2 of them assembled, plus an additional C triangle, and then 1 more with the C triangles at the bottom to create this piece. All right, I did want to zoom in here just really quickly to point out when you combine the C and D triangles, right, your light and dark, essentially you get these little, extra dog-eared pieces, right? So you want to trim that off, right? So I'm just going to take my scissors, I'm going to cut the excess off, square it up, right? And so now it's a nice corner, like that. And so I have those pieces. I combine 2 of them to look like this, to which I'll add a triangle at the bottom, and then 1 of them to the light triangle to again create essentially the building blocks of this piece. At this point, we have attached the A's to the B's, right? Again, our big flying geese, there. Then we've attached the C and D triangles to make the squares, which are the components that make up this, right? It's just 1, 2, and then an extra C triangle, and then 1 with a C triangle, and then an extra C triangle on the end in order to create this piece. Now, the next step after this is to add the E triangles, which are over here, right? 2 of them, like so. On this piece here, in order to create the counterpoint to your A and B, right? So I'm going to add these E triangles to the part we just sewed in order to create this piece, which will be the pieced part that goes against this piece like here, and then that's pretty much like the whole block. All right, got it? Okay, things are looking good here. I have my E triangles attached to my little pieced center here, which are the C and D triangles, and now I'm ready to attach the 2 larger pieces together like this in order to complete the block. Okay, that is put together. The block is complete. It looks like this. I did have to trim up a little bit on the extras just because of the way that it's laying out, both in the dog ears when you're putting the triangles together and stuff. There is some trimming that needs to probably happen in order to square things up. So I'd encourage you to just make sure that you're always tracking the larger pieces as you put them together to make sure that they're kind of falling in a line with the pattern as intended. Anyways, I hope that that was helpful to walk you through that. Make a bunch of these blocks, put them together, shablam, you got yourself a quilt.